Discuss ancient India. Yesterday, or previously, we discussed Mesopotamia. A couple things that you need to understand about India is that it is located in the continent of Asia. So geographically, it is on the eastern side of the world. One thing about the geography that you want to be familiar with is that India has the Himalayan mountains as well as being surrounded by the Indian Ocean. So both of these geographical features offer India a form of natural barriers, which when you discuss Mesopotamia, I'm sure that you went over the idea of a natural barrier allows for civilization to survive and thrive. It's also protection. When we talk about the geography, India also has very fertile silt deposits in their land. And one thing that helps them with their agriculture, which they are an extremely agricultural-based society in ancient times, is going to be monsoons, which are seasonal winds that come and rainstorms that come in the summertime. That cause flooding, which allows for the fertile soil and the silt to be deposited in the soil, which allows for farming. The Indus River civilization, which the Indus is a river that runs through India, will be first built in 2500 BCE. Now, one thing about India is that it has many advancements for its time period. One thing about India is that they had street grids that ran north to south and east to west with major avenues. It's very similar to roadways. They also had community wells for water, and even public drainage systems for wastewater, which, during this time is an extreme advancement to understand that you need to separate waste from clean water and even having a system to pull that away instead of having unsanitary conditions in the Indus River civilization. As well as the public drainage, they even had the citadel, which was like a fortress of enclosed buildings, and so it had meeting halls where they could meet and congregate for things like their government system discussions. They had warehouses, granaries, and elevated walls also offer protection or barrier from invaders. As you can see, there's a community well right here, and then an image of what the citadel looked like. So just remember, India already had natural barriers such as the Himalayan mountains and ocean, but they give an added feature of these giant, large walls that offers protection to you because you can see the individuals that are approaching the civilization and go ahead and plan to either attack or prepare for an attack. When we talk about the economy of India in ancient times, they are big on agriculture, so that means that they have a large amount of livestock as well as farming. They had crafts such as pottery, metalwork, and jewelry. One thing about India is that we have archaeologists have found many of their pottery, their metalwork, and their jewelry, and that gives us a little bit more insight into their society, as well as with their trading interactions. If you reference back to the geography of India, they have the Indian Ocean as well as the Himalayan mountains, so it opens them up to trade, especially through these water routes, with Central Asia, the Arabian Peninsula, which consists of like Saudi Arabia and the Middle Eastern countries, as well as Mesopotamia, because Mesopotamia and ancient India did exist in the same time frame. So this opens up a lot of trade opportunities for them. So let's take a look right here. You have Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. Both of these places are located in India. So here's the Indian subcontinent right here. You can see that Egypt is here, which you will learn about Egypt on a different day. But here is the Tigris and Euphrates. So these individuals could leave Mohenjo-daro and Harappa and travel across the Indian Ocean and come up to the Persian Gulf to trade and interact, as well as having these land routes which offer trade as well. Okay. Now, when we talk about their social structure, people in India in the ancient times will settle in villages. They had war leaders, and remember that war leaders or generals, very similar to Mesopotamia. They have the Rajas, which are paid war leaders, and they offer like guidance and leadership. During this time, leadership is based off of who can offer protection and safety. And so that's where the Rajas come into play with India. As far as religion goes for ancient India, they practice Hinduism and Buddhism. So Buddha being the supreme god, and with Hinduism, there's many gods. So Hinduism is a polytheistic religion, and in Indian ancient society, you have priests that hold more power or relevance in society. And so religion kind of runs or dictates what happens with the government. So it is a theocracy. India will establish 4 social classes called the Varnas. And Varnas are divided into smaller classes, which consist of the caste. And caste system will be established in India. Caste during ancient times determined what jobs you could have, who you could marry, who you could associate with. So it is pretty much a hierarchy or a system of order for society of higher, middle, lower class individuals, which the caste system has evolved, and it's not as relevant in current Indian culture, but during ancient times it was extremely relevant, and they believe that the caste system was dictated by the gods, and also the system of reincarnation, which you will learn about in a different unit. When we talk about the caste system, you have the gods, the Brahmin, the Kshatriya, the Vaishya, and the Sudras. And then also the last level, or the lower level, is going to be the untouchables, which were a group of people that were outcast. That's where we get caste system, outcast. They were cast out from society. And they were latrine cleaners, which means they cleaned the sewage system, things like that. The Brahmin, you have the priests, academics, warriors and kings, merchant and landowners. So if you pay attention here, the merchants and landowners are relatively considered like the middle class, or maybe even a little bit of the upper class, because they are dealing with money and land, and the ability to trade equals money during this time. And then the Sudras are usually commoners, peasants, or servants. As you can see with this hierarchy, and this proves even more that we do have a theocracy in ancient India, that the gods play an essential role and dictate these levels of social classes. When we talk about the Indus civilization, as far as written language goes, archaeologists as well as historians have not been able to read it. We cannot decipher the script, but we do know that the Indus language, has many characters. We've noticed that they have writings and pieces of a current alphabet that they had during this time, and we've even found images of animals. So we know that they did have a common language, but we cannot decipher it or read it. We do know from what archaeologists have discovered with pottery, jewelry, civilizations and buildings, that they had a central authority in their civilization, which means they potentially had some form of government. There are similarities between the cities in India, especially with Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Both of those cities within the Indus River civilization had a form of like ancient air conditioning, drainage systems, things like that. All of the Indus River civilization had some type of standard weights and measures. Remember street grids, very similar to roads like we have now, and also a drainage system. So it was not an necessarily unsanitary ancient civilization. And then as far as the decline goes, we know that with every civilization there is a rise and there will be a fall. And so the decline, we believe, occurred in 2000 BCE. We do not really know why. There are a couple of theories. Floods, loss of water, potential invasion, which we know that the Aryans came in and potentially took over the area of India. Mohenjo-daro, they believe, was abandoned. There could have been disease or a combination of these several factors. And when we discuss the Vedic period, it's going to be where Aryans came in and controlled India. We're not sure of their origin, but when you have a group of people that come into a civilization to take over, there's going to be a cultural diffusion or a meshing of culture, which means that the central concentrated, when I say concentrated, I want you to think of like orange juice. You know how concentrated orange juice, you put water in it and it like, mixes up. That's kind of what happens in the Vedic period, where it's not just the Indus River civilization, a new group of people come in as well and take over, and there's a cultural diffusion. And when we talk about the Vedas are the sacred writing, and they're also going to be a religious text that deals with Hinduism and Buddhism. And they give us even more detail about the history or society of the Indus River Valley. And that is your last slide for